Let me start by painting you a clearer picture. I'm 27 years old, and my ex, Rachel, is 29. We met in the most modern way you can imagine, through a dating app. It was one of those apps that promises to pair you with someone who aligns with your soul or, at the very least, shares your favorite streaming service preferences. You know the drill: swipe right, match, exchange a few witty messages, and then transition to the awkward yet thrilling exchange of social media handles. It was all so typical, almost too easy. But as any seasoned dater will tell you, that's how it goes. One click, one match, and suddenly, you're either face to face with someone who could be the one, or you're just another momentary distraction. From the moment Rachel and I started talking, something felt different. It wasn't just the usual back and forth about favorite movies or why pineapple doesn't belong on pizza. No, this felt deeper, more connected. Our conversations had this effortless depth, like we'd been waiting to share all our secrets with someone who finally got it. It wasn't just idle chit-chat, it was real, raw, and incredibly easy. We talked for hours about everything: our hobbies, dreams, childhood memories, what we wanted out of life, and even the wreckage left behind by our past relationships. Some of the things we shared felt too personal for someone I'd just met online, but with Rachel, it felt right. It felt like I wasn't just talking to her, I was with her, like she wasn't just listening to me but really hearing me, understanding me in a way no one had before. Rachel's past, though, wasn't as easy to talk about. She had a complicated history. I found out early on that she'd been cheated on multiple times in her previous relationships, and those betrayals had left scars. I could see the traces of them in her eyes when she talked about those men, the anger and sadness bubbling just below the surface. It made me want to hold her close and promise her that I wasn't going to be like them, but I knew the words didn't always work that way. Her childhood hadn't been kind to her either. She had a stepdad who was abusive, a mom who died of cancer when she was still a teenager, and a biological father who had never been part of the picture. She was raised by her grandparents, who, while loving, hadn't been equipped to help her heal from the emotional wreckage she'd grown up with. In comparison, my life felt almost embarrassingly stable. My parents were still together, a quiet testament to what a long-lasting partnership could look like, even if it wasn't perfect. Sure, my dad had been dealing with post-polio syndrome for the last 3 years, but my mom had stayed by his side through it all. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. My last relationship had been with a woman who, in hindsight, was a bit of a perfect match. She was patient, kind, and supportive. We had our share of issues, sure, but overall, it was a relationship that felt good, solid, and reliable. But I messed it up. I made mistakes, let her slip through my fingers, and to this day, I carry the weight of that loss like a stone in my chest. So when Rachel and I started dating, it felt like something new, like maybe this could be the one that changes everything. Our first few dates were full of that early excitement, the kind of nervous energy where you don't know whether to laugh or speak your mind because you're still figuring each other out. But there was something else there, too, something that hinted we might be building something real. We were different, yes, but in a way that balanced us out. Yet, after about a month of seeing each other, something felt off. Rachel seemed distant, like she had one foot out the door. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself I was overthinking things, but then she said it. "Maybe it's better if you stop pursuing me." The words cut me deeper than I wanted to admit, but I wasn't ready to let go yet. We already planned one last date, a kind of farewell, I guess, but we went through with it anyway. Then, a week later, Rachel surprised me. She gave me another shot, and I felt like I'd been given a second chance, that maybe this was fate telling me to hang in there. 3 months later, we were official. It felt like the world was falling into place, like we were building something special. For a while, it was like we were living in a dream. But just as I was beginning to settle into the relationship, Rachel dropped a bombshell. About a month into us being official, she confessed she'd had a relapse. The trauma of her past relationships had resurfaced, triggered by old fears and memories of being cheated on. It hit me harder than I expected, but I did everything I could to reassure her. I told her I wasn't that guy, that I wasn't going to betray her trust, but in my gut I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. I asked her if her initial hesitation about us had been tied to this trauma, and after a long pause, she admitted it had been. It was a relief to hear her say it out loud, but it didn't exactly make the situation any easier. As time went on, I began noticing patterns. Little things started setting Rachel off: an offhand comment, a picture that didn't turn out right, a nickname I used that she didn't like. At first I brushed it off, telling myself it was just her personality. I was patient with her, always trying to see things from her perspective. I knew her past had been tough, and her demanding job didn't help, so I figured maybe this was just part of the deal. But soon enough, it became a routine. Something would upset her, I'd apologize, and then we'd move on, or so I thought. Then, one time, during a casual phone call, she made a joke that stuck with me. "I'm probably the only mature girl you've ever dated," she said with a laugh. On the surface it seemed harmless, but something about it didn't sit right with me. It felt like a dig at my ex, someone who didn't deserve to be brought into our dynamic. So, I decided to address it. I calmly told Rachel that the comment wasn't fair and that maybe, just maybe, she could try to lighten up a little. She apologized, but minutes later, I got a text saying she'd pay me back for all our dates and cut me off completely. Panic set in. I begged her to reconsider, and eventually she agreed, but the incident was just another in a string of similar situations that made me wonder if I was losing myself in the relationship. Conflict with Rachel was never straightforward. Any time I tried to vent or share feedback, it felt like she took it as a personal attack. The emotional toll of her responses was exhausting. I spent hours trying to reassure her, explaining that communication was key, that we had to be open with each other if we were going to grow together. But it was like my words hit a wall every single time. She'd promised to open up, to let me in, but the cycle never really changed. Her mood swings became harder to ignore, especially when she confessed she wasn't dating for marriage, she was just in it for fun. That statement hit me like a freight train. I'd been thinking long-term, hoping that this relationship was something more than just a passing fling, but Rachel didn't seem to share the same vision. When I asked her if she was serious about us, her answer was a half-hearted no. Then came the mixed signals, telling her grandmother that we'd broken up, only to laugh it off seconds later, saying it was a joke. I was left feeling more confused than ever. By the end of it, I wasn't just questioning the relationship, I was questioning myself. The comments about my weight, my habits, even my clumsiness, all of it started to wear me down. I tried everything to change, to become the version of me she seemed to want. I started working out, dressing better, tweaking my habits in the hopes that something would finally click. But no matter what I did, it never felt like enough. The last month of our relationship was the hardest. Rachel started giving me the silent treatment, leaving me to second-guess everything I said and did. I couldn't win. We had one final, explosive argument, and that was it. She ended things with me, leaving me with a mess of unanswered questions. A month later, I saw pictures of her with another guy, a guy she'd met on a hike. They looked happy, too happy. And that's when it all clicked. During our last month together, when she told me she needed to miss me, was she already planning her exit? Was I just a placeholder until someone else came along? I'll probably never know if she cheated, but the thought eats away at me. I gave her so much space to heal, to overcome the pain she'd been through, but in doing so, I forgot to respect myself. I let her push me to the edge, and in the end, I was left with nothing but questions. Would it have been different if I had stood up for myself more? If I hadn't given so much of myself away in the hopes that she would finally heal?